Worst things you can do in college is be a picky eater and vegetarian. I learned this the hard way. When I was a freshman here at UAB, the dining options were much more limited than they are now. So I found very little use for my large mandatory meal plan. Instead, my amazing mom would devote a day each week to cook for her baby. She would pack this large variety of food into a bunch of containers, and that is what I would eat for the rest of the week. But I still did occasionally go to the commons or our dining hall. And one day I was meeting my friend for lunch. She knew about my meal plan predicament, and she asked me if I'd mind paying for her. I didn't mind, and once we sat down and started talking, she explained her situation to me about how she worked a separate job solely to finance her meals on campus. When I heard this, my heart sank because I knew she worked not one job, but two jobs, one of which was just to pay for food, in addition to being a full-time college student. I felt terrible, and I wanted to help my friend. And the best thing I could do was to take the meal plan that I didn't use and use it to cover her meals. And that is what I did for the rest of the school year. And I didn't think much else of this issue until one day when I was leaving my dorm. Our hallways are plastered with a variety of different posters. And that day, one caught my eye. So I stopped and I looked at it. It was this big blue poster. And it provided pointers on avoiding the dreaded freshman 15. For those of you who don't know what the freshman 15 is, it is the weight gain associated with beginning college. At this moment, my mind jumped to my friend because I knew she couldn't overeat even if she wanted to. I started to wonder if her situation was unique to her or if there were other students like her. So I started to do a little research, and I came across a case manager here at UAB, a kind of social worker, if you will. And she explained to me how there are students here on campus who don't know where they're getting their next meal. Their hunger extends past the stereotype of college student who only eats ramen noodles or other similar inexpensive foods. And these students, despite working multiple jobs, struggle to pay rent and tuition and therefore find themselves giving up meals. This is called food insecurity. And although the term food insecurity might seem new, the idea is not. We typically associate food insecurity with someone like this, an impoverished child in a third world country, but never with someone like this, a college student. For this reason, college students don't get the help they need. And for that to change, we must change our view of food insecurity. We all on some level realize that hunger is bad, but we don't always recognize how influential it is in our lives. But there are theories and studies that do. And as you're learning here at TEDxUAB, one of the most famous is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I know y'all are experts at this point, but I'm going to give you a quick refresher. So although this pyramid looks a bit like the food pyramid, it can be better likened to a video game. The goal of a video game is to win, and you do so by passing the initial levels. According to Maslow, the goal of life is to reach self-actualization or the fulfilling of one's potential. And you do so by meeting the needs listed on the bottom 4 rungs of this chart. If you look closely, food is on the bottom. And I'm going to demonstrate why. How many of you right now are hungry? Just raise your hands. Don't be shy. Those of you who are hungry, how many of you found it difficult to focus on what I was saying? How many of you were distracted? Again, raise your hands. I won't be offended. I'm hungry too. And if you don't raise your hands, you're just polite liars. It's okay. Either way, I'm right. If you're hungry, you're distracted. And I was up here, and all I could think about was where I was going to get my next meal and what I was going to eat. And this is because hunger is distracting. Maslow realized this, and that is why he put food along with water and breathing and sleep. Because when we don't have these needs, Whether we like it or not, our entire focus is on getting these needs. This is why students facing food insecurity struggle to reach their full potential. Ironically, hunger consumes the mind until it's satiated. And all of this culminates into one really important question. Why should we care? And I could answer this question, but the UN diplomat Jacques Diouf answers it much more eloquently and concisely than I ever could. So I'm going to tell you what he says. He says, hunger is not an issue of charity. It is an issue of justice. Whoa, right? Moving and powerful. But we have more of a reason to care than justice. Because we know and care about these students who are affected. They are our coworkers, our classmates, our friends, and even family members. But we don't always realize what they're going through because it can be difficult to discuss. And although this problem looks large and complex, the answer is shockingly simple. And it lies with this one question. Before today, how many of you knew about the severity of collegiate hunger? Raise your hands if you knew about this before. So very few. And that is the crux of our issue, ignorance. And the best way to overcome ignorance in order to end student hunger, we should target awareness campaigns towards three major groups: students, universities, and the community. I'm going to start with the students because not only are we the people who are affected, but we're also the people who can help. When I first learned about all of this from the case manager, she mentioned the services she offered, counseling services, and the small food pantry in her office. And yet, I had never heard about any of this. And I knew most of my peers hadn't heard either. And that was because there wasn't a way for students to get involved. But I couldn't just let it go either, because I couldn't bear the thought of my peers, my friends, struggling through this alone, even when there was help available. So I took matters into my own hands, and I formed Donor to Diner. Donor to Diner is a student organization here at UAB that has two goals. One is to increase the resources available for students. And we've done that through food drives to increase and expand the pantry. And we also host the One Meal Initiative, a meal donation program we initiated that allows students with excess meals to help those who don't have enough. Sound familiar? This is a large-scale version of what I did for my friend. And whenever we host the One Meal Initiative, a few days before, we go out into the commons, our dining hall, and we hand out flyers and talk to students, my members and I. We publicize the event. And we often ask students this question: can you define food insecurity? And the vast majority of students respond with a blank stare. They have no idea. A smaller fraction, about 20%, have an answer and have only ever heard one answer: an eating disorder. And lastly, we have a handful of students who actually know what food insecurity is. A handful out of 1,000 students is not a lot. And this leads back to the nescience I have been talking about. That is why Donor to Diner's second goal is to increase awareness of student food insecurity. And this has two effects. The first, we're able to inform students who have excess meals that they can donate to help their peers. We're also able to inform students who don't have enough that food insecurity is not a normal part of college. And we show them where they can go get help. All of this has been extremely, unbelievably successful. But we owe that to our partnership with the university. And that leads us to our second group, the university. Universities want and need their students to succeed, and they're willing to help. But they have to know that there's a problem in order to do so. And one of the best ways to convey a problem is with statistics. because numbers are concrete. They help us wrap our minds around abstract ideas. Naturally, when I began my quest to understand food insecurity, my first question was, how many students are experiencing this? And this is what I found. The University of Manoa in Hawaii, 21% of their student body experiences some form of food insecurity. UC San Diego, 35%. Western Oregon University, 59%. That's over half their student body. UAB, we don't know. We don't know how many students here at UAB experience food insecurity. And a cursory glance at this might make you think, well, okay, UAB clearly hasn't done enough to tackle this issue. But I've spent this entire time telling you what UAB has done. What you can actually learn from this graphic is that there are a lot of students in campuses all across this nation who are experiencing food insecurity. If you look closely at this list, you'll see that it's very short. 3 schools. And that is because the census does not include college students. So universities are responsible for collecting this information. But not all universities have the resources to do this. Although these numbers are extremely useful, they aren't necessary. And in order to make an impact, an administrator can create a small food pantry or train existing counselors to identify and help students facing food insecurity. And once more students come forward as time goes on, administrators will be able to determine the type and level of need they see at their school and modify and add to resources as needed. And the students and university together have clearly been successful. But we can't end student hunger alone. And that leads us to our last group, arguably the most important, the community. The community helps its own. And the community, in fact, has experience with food insecurity, through programs like food banks and soup kitchens, and a variety of other things. The community has helped those who can't put food on their table. All they have to do is extend this to include college students. And they've done this here at Birmingham. Part of Donor to Diner's advocacy efforts includes publicity, and we've been featured in local newscasts and newspapers. Community viewers have seen this, and they've donated. And donations are always helpful, but the community can do more. The community can help us spread awareness of this problem, because awareness among the general population leads to students who are more prepared to handle food insecurity. There are times when our services are crucial. Sometimes the difference between a college graduate and a college dropout is a meal. But I want to make sure we realize that this is a two-way street. If we're able to help these students graduate and fulfill their potential, we stand to gain a lot. The cure to cancer or the solution to the problems in the Middle East could be trapped in the mind of a student who's busy worrying about the next meal instead of learning. And I mentioned at the beginning of this that the solution is very simple. And this is what it is. All you have to do is familiarize yourself with student food insecurity. To do more, tell a friend or a family member. For the more ambitious, join or start your own Donor to Diner chapter. Once the cloud of ignorance surrounding this issue is gone, the resources necessary to help these students come quickly and easily. And I realize that the solution can seem overly simple or overly optimistic, but I assure you it will work. Donor to Diner now has over 75 official student members. We've received thousands of donations in the past 6 months alone. We have students from other universities in other states who want to start their own Donor to Diner chapter. And yet, 3 short years ago, This idea of food insecurity was virtually unknown on campus. And Donor to Diner? Donor to Diner had one member, me. My story illustrates how information and a little bit of motivation can be life-changing. We all have the power to make a difference. Whether you do is up to you. Thank you.